Welcome to the Popcorn Talk Network, for the online broadcast network that features movie discussion, news, and interviews. Press 1. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies.
Hello?
Nope.
What happened?
Hold on. It looks like it was just the shortened version of the intro.
Why?
Do we have a shortened version? We have an edited version for content?
Yes, we do.
Yes, hold on. Let me
And
find
to fit in the
it.
format.
Hold
I
on.
didn't know.
Hands above the desk. At all
So
times.
strict. So if I slam my fist down in fury, that's still technically hands above the desk.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Hands on a hard body. Good documentary, by the way.
Which one?
It's called Hands on a Hard Body. It's about a contest. Oh man, I forget where it is. It could have been in Texas, where this car dealership gives away a car.
Oh, you keep your
You have to
hands on.
keep your hands in the car, and the person who keeps their hands in the
All right,
car
guys,
for the
take
longest
two.
time.
Sorry
gets
about
Oh, it's
that.
Yes,
on.
thank
Here we go.
Contest.
Welcome to the Popcorn Talk Network, for the online broadcast network that features movie discussion, news, and interviews. Press 1. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies.
I'm opening. We have an eye, sort of a nostril, 2 teeth. One of the teeth has a small cavity. Close call, folks, but I think we got here just in time.
Presented by Maria Menounos and Kevin Undergaro. This is Anatomy of a Movie. In-depth discussions and breakdowns of various movie titles. And now that you've seen the movie, let the dissection begin.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another Anatomy of Movie here on Popcorn Talk. We are dissecting
Putting the spotlight on.
a movie called Spotlight.
There you go.
There you go.
Of course, if you haven't seen it, what are you doing? Go watch it. Because we're going to be talking about it and spoiling every last little bit. The good news is it's a biopic, so it can't really fully get spoiled.
No. Unless you just don't have any awareness of the story or have ever read a newspaper about it.
Or the internet at this
exactly.
point, too.
That is the voice of Demetri Panos.
Hello, movie fans.
We have Marisa Serafini.
Hello, everybody.
We have John Comerford.
Hello.
And we have altogether a diverse panel of Christians, non-Christians,
Catholics,
Muslims,
lapsed Catholics,
Jews.
recovering Catholics.
Recovering Catholics.
Yeah. So,
Let's start there before we even get into overall impressions, because obviously whatever your faith is, kind of you bring something to the table when you go watch this movie.
yeah,
So let's
sure,
start there,
yes,
and then
absolutely.
we'll go into overall impressions. Since we started with you, Demetri, let's start with you this time.
As to what I bring to the table? Or
Yeah, in
as
terms
to-
of faith.
these are things that I don't usually talk about in public. It's like politics and religion. I like to talk about movies. But, I'll just say I have faith. I believe. And I do believe, that someone very close, near, and dear to me has much faith. And I can visibly see how the faith helps this person through. So, with that said, that I, through, in a sense of an osmosis, I'm at the point, too, where, I have some semblance of faith. And growing up a Greek Orthodox person, too, and I did go to church. I was an altar boy. So I have all that, instilled within my history as well. So am I lapsing? I don't go to church every Sunday.
But so you were not a troubled youth, correct?
I was not a troubled youth.
Okay.
I don't believe.
It was a troubling youth. but not a
troubling
troubling
youth. Yes, that's.
Yeah.
I have many
Important
teachers who would
distinction,
attest.
and we'll important to know because we'll come back to that.
And as many people have pointed out on various comments. Too. Yes. So yes.
Marissa Marisa?
Yes, I grew up strongly in the Catholic faith, as my whole family. I've been through as many, communion, confirmation. I've been an altar server. It's Maria, actually. I've been an altar server up until high school, and I was a lector and Eucharistic minister after that, even up until college, which actually wasn't that long ago. So it's been a few months since I've been to church, but I'm very well aware of the Catholic community, what goes on, what still goes on. I haven't been to church lately, but my faith is still there, and I definitely have a strong opinion of this film. But lapse here and there, but it's always been there. The faith has always been there.
If I can to attest to you, Marisa on this panel for as long as we've worked together, through her knowledge and faith, I always do, like, whenever there's a movie and there's particular symbolisms or maybe it's a theme, I always go to you, and I find that through your faith and stuff, I have actually learned from you as well. So I want to put that out there. That I've always appreciated what you've given to the podcast in that regards.
Thank you.
Excellent. And John, yours is an interesting story.
Well, my parents are born and bred in Boston, very severely Irish Catholic, shall we say.
Severely, yeah.
So, I wasn't born in Boston, though. We moved prior to me being born. However, I was raised Catholic. I had intentions of going into the seminary when I was a young man. Changed that. I have since called myself a recovering Catholic. But I am an ordained minister, so even though, despite the fact that having an ordination, Demetri does not come to me for symbolism.
Well, believe it or not, though, John, that was something that had come up. That is something that had come up like much later on,
right,
through our podcast and friendship.
I
didn't even know. Well, but from day one with Marisa, when we did Pacific Rim, day one, Marisa brought up religious overtones, and that was like the least that I had even gotten, and I was like, yeah, okay. So, and it's not, and in all fairness, neither one of you beats anyone over the head with it. And you know what I mean? Well, you haven't. And, but I say that in a complimentary way.
The knowledge is there.
That's why.
So, all right. Well, the reason
I think you're the only non-Catholic here.
I am apparently.
Yeah. Oh no, wait. I'm sorry. You're Greek Orthodox.
Greek Orthodox. Yeah.
Okay.
And I felt it's almost like for this movie, I think it's a disclaimer, right?
Yeah.
When you talk about this movie, in some ways, you kind of have to know, and I think it's important when we talk about various things to understand, especially for our audience, to know where we're coming from. And by the way, feel free to, if you think it's important to you, as you guys write comments, tell us where you're coming at it from. Because I look at this in two ways. Number one, it's a great movie. Number two, if you really think about it, holy shit.
Wow.
Emphasis
Pardon the pun.
But John, you said that your parents were from Boston. Now that's important. It's important. I'm from Boston.
A lot of my family's born in Boston.
And Catholicism, Christianity, Irish Catholicism, Italian, very, very big
even if you're
in
not
Boston.
Catholic, it's just like Garabedian. I mean, it is. I mean, it's pervasive. You can't get away from it.
You cannot get away from it, and that is why too. And we'll go into it more as a Bostonian. Like how this story permeated into that culture
and how
was
it was
insane.
Yeah, and how it took so long to really uncover. How it was so people. Not always willing, but some willing to just look the other way because it's the church and what are we going to do? And crazy.
Yeah.
Well, I think, part of it too, it comes from a culture just in general. I think, if you go back to like the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, not that I've lived there, but from, kind of what I've seen of history, everyone's told to keep their mouth shut, you know what I mean? And then, don't speak out, it's just the way it is. What can you do? And obviously, this band, the Spotlight team, they were like they wouldn't take no for an answer.
Right.
Yeah.
They were rebels.
Tragedies for good men to stay silent.
Yep.
I mean, one of the best lines in the entire movie is, "It seems like everyone knows the story but us."
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I also my favorite line was, "It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to abuse one."
Yep.
If I got that right, I hope I quoted that right. But I think
You either quoted or paraphrase, but the point comes across. Now,
Yeah.
as far as my thoughts on this movie, too, I thought it was a great movie. And, there were even times as being a Bostonian, I even felt like, wow, this doesn't make us look so great, and this seems to be the year of like making movies about people from Boston who are very entrenched in Boston history. We had earlier this year Black Mass,
right.
and now we have Spotlight. But what was amazing is, unlike Black Mass, where I was a little kid, just going to the movies, not the Bulgers were in the periphery. They were in the periphery. With Spotlight, I was older and I was more aware, more self-aware. And you truly understood what was going on. And believe it or not, this movie shed light into even other things that I was like shocked and amazed as to how global that this coverage spanned. So
it was something that you said that I think one of the great strengths of the movie is it did point its own spotlight at themselves and what they didn't do or should have known but didn't or didn't follow up on. I mean, I thought that was great. They weren't really making heroes out of anybody.
Yeah.
They were just saying, oh yeah, we missed it too. And it's hard not to when you're in that culture. You can't sometimes see the forest for the trees, and it does take an outsider sometimes like Barron to come in and go, hey, why isn't this a bigger story here? So
and I love that, and I loved how that he was the catalyst for all this, and he sometimes, like you said, you need a outside maybe unbiased type of opinion to ask all the questions. Right. That will get the answers. Ask the question that other people.
Exactly.
Yeah, ask the question that other people aren't willing to ask because they again just turn their.
But they have cinematically though. For just think of story structure and writing and stuff like that, you need an outsider. So who do they pick? They pick a guy who's been bounced around from New York to Miami. He's not a Bostonian and he's Jewish. So it's like
and he has a history of being a hatchet man.
Right. Exactly.
So he comes in. So that's the other great thing. I always upon first seeing this movie, I jokingly, called it's all the Archdiocese men. And, you break it down because that's the closest movie. There's been many, but that's the closest movie that I can.
Sure.
All the President's Men is compare this to, minus the fact that All the President's Men could be considered glossier because it's about the political, turmoil and taking down a president. This one was a little bit deeper rooted because people didn't want to believe.
No.
Like, and they literally didn't want to hear about it and
didn't want to read about it.
Yeah.
They didn't want to accept that.
So it is an interesting thing that Liev Schreiber's Marty Baron comes in with all the things that you said as an outsider, but he came in not necessarily even wanting to do this story. There was another agenda going on, and he's like, well, how come, because he was thinking, how am I going to trim budgets here? And, he's like, well, you guys have to knock this out of the park. There was the fear of job loss, too, I think. You guys have to do what I say.
It's spotlighted, right, using the word, at a time when, still today, newspapers are just going downhill.
Yes.
And so that was very much a part of it.
Yeah. How can it not be?
Marisa, what were your thoughts? Since we haven't really talked about, what were your thoughts of the movie?
Oh, I thought as a film, fantastic. All the elements, directing, acting, writing, it was all there. The content, obviously, was more disturbing to learn. I love procedural stories, I really do. And the content that they were covering was so disturbing to watch, it just made me, as a Catholic and as a person, very upset while watching it. But I think it's also a story that people who may know is that what happened, they need to know more how it happened and why this happened.
This is one of those great stories because even if you didn't know it was true, if you just came to the movie and it was just a movie, it was just told well, acted well, shot well, and it stands up on its own without it being true. And then then in the end, and you see all those cities, is just, oh, that's right, this wasn't just a movie.
Yeah.
brutal.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the most effective title card because
I thought it
you
was
start
great.
with a couple of sentences,
Yeah, and they're tiny in the frame,
and then
overwhelming these cities.
and you just get you think for a moment, okay, they fit everything into one title card, and I think there's a total of 4.
Another one, and then the international one.
And each one is screen filling.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
Yeah.
even the last one. It's not like and 3 more.
And what you just saw here happened in all these
The
cities.
global too,
Yeah.
like it was
Yeah,
global,
countries.
not just. It was not
Countries.
just. Yeah, it was countries. It was not just the United States. It was not just New England. I mean, when it was like, oh my god! And then it also. This is another reason for me why that was so effective. As not only was that it was a slap of awakening, but how important that spotlight team. What their story did,
And
because
not-
it wasn't
yeah.
just it didn't just affect New Englanders,
Right.
It ended up affecting the global.
And not only
populace.
was the story, but the fact that they kept pursuing it, so they got the story to the point where Cardinal Law or anybody couldn't just brush it aside.
Right.
It was a one bad apple kind of thing. No, they couldn't.
Right.
So, which I really applaud them. And of course, it's the
Systemic.
hardest thing we have in journalism today is that we don't have the resources, or they don't spend the resources to have that kind of investigative journalism anymore. Or
Well,
not
that's
as
why
much.
I mean it was the early on scene was very. And how long does this normally take? Over a year.
What?
And you're listening to that, and like, who has time for that?
Yeah,
Especially nowadays. But I think that's the other great success of this movie. It spotlights the fact of how important this type of journalism is. And yeah, to your point, there is no budget for it, unfortunately.
And who's doing the cost-benefit analysis or something like that? Because wouldn't that be amazing to find out? You spent a year on this story and 600 stories, subsequent stories off of it. And okay, that was a year well spent if you're just talking in numbers for those investors. Think about it.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
To say nothing of the fact that they finally put this horror to the light, and so that people could actually do something about it.
What I loved about the format is that yes, they spend so much time on this investigative journalism, but as a filmmaking standpoint, I loved how they always had a timetable. It's like other newspapers are going to get this. We had to be the first one, so it kind of still
Give 'em a
pushed.
ticking time clock.
Yeah, it still pushed the story along. Like we have to get this out there. So it never felt like an hour, or like a year. Sorry, it always felt like, hey, we do have a time.
And I think that's to the writer and director's credit, because they didn't approach this as man, we're gonna give it to the church. They approached this more as we're gonna make this a ode to journalism, and focus on their tried and true methods of research and bring that more to spotlight and say the tedium that's involved and following leads that could be dead or dry up. And that to me was the fascinating part. The mere fact that they pulled on this thread and got this blanket, this global, tragic blanket. That is the side effect of what good journalism does. I look at this movie too as a great look at history.
It is. But I also think what's amazing that they did in this movie is, like you just said, all this thread, but all those pieces were there, and the bad journalism, which didn't allow them to see it before, was overcome by the good journalism to see it and put it all together and go, oh my God.
Yeah.
But they did that in one movie. It's like, wow, that they're willing to shed that spotlight on all of that.
What was the story that they were? Because I forget. It's been some time since I've seen the movie, so help me fill in my memory spaces here. What was the story that they were pushing to do?
Police department.
It was a police department corruption, which could have been fine.
Never happened in Boston.
Never, or anywhere else.
Anywhere else, never happened.
It's a pat story. We've heard of police corruption. It was great going on this thread and being pushed to take that. And that was amazing to me. They took this what can be tedious research and they made it a very fascinating it's a look into the past, really.
Yeah, and well, you know, can you
how-
imagine trying to watch that for real, and the tedium and going knocking on all those doors and reading all those journals or whatever it was, and sifting through all that information? How exciting would that be? But put it in a montage with some nice music underneath. And say, hey, this is interesting.
It's also a solitary act for the most part.
Yes.
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 I mean, yes, you have your team they had their team of 4, and you know, if you want to count, you know, the other 2, you got them. But they didn't disclose information with them until the absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
And so, you know, when you know, Rachel McAdams and Mark Ruffalo have that moment when he comes to her house, I thought that was really, because who else are you going to go and complain to?
Yeah, you can't. That's it. Yeah.
You know. But yeah, let's start to get a little bit more concrete. You know, the interesting part, we were kind of discussing this before we started, so I want to shed light on it. The way the actors approached it, they were basically, in order to get into their roles, they were pretty much being investigators in their own right by interviewing,
following, and yes, exactly,
the actual journalists
who were not who were put off by it. He's like, whoa, what are you getting so nosy about?
Yeah, and Ruffalo had a great story because he shadowed Resendez in the movie, okay? Because that's who he played.
Right.
And Resendez says, you know, so this guy comes over to my house and he sits down at a coffee table, takes out a notebook, puts his iPhone on the table. Next thing I know, I was like, what? Who the hell are you? What are you doing in my house?
Why are you asking me all these questions?
All of these questions, and the irony of it all is that's what, you know.
Exactly what it is.
Resendez
Tables
did,
were
and
turned.
The tables were turned, but you know, in such a great research way. Again, the tedium of research. This is what Ruffalo does, and all the cast did, in researching and wanting to get this right. We always hear stories about how actors will shadow a cop if they're playing a cop or whatever they do. This one, it was brought more to light because of the subject matter and journalists being interviewed by people who were playing journalists in a movie, and I felt that it seemed to be very thorough, at least from Mark Ruffalo's standpoint, because his performance
Well, everybody talked about. Well, Robbie, Michael Keaton's character, he was going on and on about how he was freaked out by how accurate Keaton was, and he was kept getting put off by it because it was like looking in the mirror, but I couldn't control it.
Yeah, and to that point, Rachel McAdams, following Sasha around, she always asked like the minute details, like what type of shoes do you wear? Are they platforms? Are they heels? And what size Post-its do you use? Do you like the big ones, the small ones? Like the credible research that went into it to make it so authentic. I was like, that's great on the actors and made it the whole story more real.
Did you hear about the story when the reporters went to the set and they were looking at the place, their office with Robbie's in the background, and they sat down at their desks and they started moving items on the desk because they were in the wrong spot, and they were, well, actually I had the Rolodex over here, and they started aligning the desk so it would fit with how they remember it.
They were marking their territory.
Yeah.
That's what they were
like,
doing.
no,
That's great.
I didn't put my Post-its there. They go right here.
Right, like the cell phone
Yeah,
wasn't on the
exactly.
left,
Yeah.
it was on the right.
Well, that's kind of great production
It is.
design. It's like, hey,
terrific.
let me go to the store. What do you need bought?
And
we'll just put it down for
This
you.
is unusual because I heard another interview where they were saying that the writers, obviously the writer-director Thomas McCarthy and the other writer, his partner is, what's his name?
Singer.
Thank you.
Josh Singer.
Josh Singer. Okay.
Josh Singer.
So on set, apparently, or beforehand, I can't remember which one. So they had obviously asked the reporters what they thought about some of the dialogue. Would they actually say it this way? And they kind of were saying, well, no, we'd actually say it this way about how to ask questions, what order, and those kinds of things. And you rarely have somebody on the outside giving you notes on a script, especially to the writer-director.
Yeah, and you usually don't want writers.
No.
but you know,
don't.
it seemed...
But they were so confident and they were so appreciative of the help and getting it right that they said, yes, absolutely, we want input. So I thought that was a great thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, what was great, you know, kind of with biopics, right?
Yeah.
You twist something to make it a little bit more cinematic.
Yeah.
And just the way we've been talking, I mean, they literally stuck to as authentic as you can get, taking the most boring thing imaginable and just going with it and not being like, oh, you know what, maybe there's a chase scene.
Right.
Well, here's a simple example. I thought this was a really unique way to get the X-Files out. When they were going through the journals, where the priests were cataloged, and where they got, so they all go down. There's no light. There's a dead rat in the corner, and the whole thing.
Right.
The three of them are there, and it's the one shot. And he's, I can't read this here because he doesn't have his glasses. You read it. So that a fun way, because he has to get the X-Files out. The audience needs to know it. And they create this whole little scene, all because they need somebody to say it they just need to read it out loud, so we don't have to read it, we can hear it. Mm-hmm. I go, well, that's just a clever way to make it, because it's all just X-Files, but I'm fascinated because of the character work and the way they were doing it.
Absolutely. Or waiting for your clock to strike a particular time so that you can get files.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which again, it's like you're just sitting around, but again, I think that the way that it was filmed and the way that it was performed, I mean, you actually set up in those scenes a villain, which was the cop, the sheriff, the clerk, being a jerk. And
just create conflict.
Yeah, you create
keep it dramatic.
Yeah, but it was really done well. And this is a movie. It is a slow burn. It's
because you know the outcome, so you got to create some tension elsewhere.
Right. Yeah, it's deliberately paced. Yeah, this isn't an action movie. But again, you stick with it. You are really given a really keen insight as to journalism and to how important, pen to paper really is and what it meant for the time. Again, we talked about at the top of the show, newspapers are, it's a dying breed.
It's a transforming breed. That's
fair enough. It's a transforming breed. But in the day, that's how you got your news. I rode many a ride in the T, and people had their Boston Globe or their Boston Herald, regardless.
But just the sheer, even because computers, what I liked was they were kind of around.
Yeah.
But at the same time, every time they got a phone call in the office, they never turned to the computer and started typing. It'd be like, where's my notebook?
Yeah.
All right, go. Where's my blue pen?
It's always the blue pen.
Always the blue pen. The editor had the black pen, and then the ultimate was the red pen.
Yeah. Was it the end of the red pen? Whatever.
So I like that hierarchy of pens, by the way.
Yeah, it is. It's nice. But they still write because there's something about the notes that you take. I don't know the specific journalistic code about having those notes and everything like that. Because I don't know that they still don't use computers for that, do they?
I don't know. I mean, well, a lot of it though, if you watch any news today, any local news, a lot of people just have their cell phones, their iPads. Sometimes they even do their interviews right on their cell phone. They use that as their recording device. So, yes, a lot has changed. That's why I say it's a keen look into journalism and what it meant and what journalism can do, not just for a local territory, but globally when it's done right and smart. Given
the resources to do it.
And given the resources.
Am I letting that show?
Finding the resources to do it. And that's one of the things, too, going into this movie. Again, this could have been a very droll movie, I think, with pacing, I think the story, but the performances in this movie, I think, really... this is ensemble casting
this is great.
At its best.
It's honored it with a nomination.
This is, the casting in this movie and what each performer put into this movie was amazing. I can't point to one and say, they were the weakest link, because there were performances. I mentioned Stanley Tucci, who plays Garabedian. His performance is great, and he's not in the movie a ton.
He's so understated, but so powerful in those moments. And Jamie Sheridan was fabulous. Slattery. They were all. There wasn't a weak moment in it in terms of acting. They were all strong performances, and it seems like they completely turned it over to the ensemble idea. Yeah. I don't think anybody was just trying to do, but I'm going to do my job and do it right to fit in here, and it was like a chorus.
Here's the thing, I'll let you speak in one moment. I have to highlight the victims overall. Because it's one of those roles, they're on screen for such a short amount of time that you're like, we don't have, let's just cast somebody, right? Yeah. But if those don't work, this movie isn't going anywhere.
I thought they were all good. I thought the guy that was the blue collar guy that said, "Don't use my name," and at the end he said, "Yeah, go ahead and use it," because he has a kid. I thought he was fabulous. I thought the guy that was walking through the park that realized he was gay, and that I thought that was extremely effective. And then of course, was it Savian? the one who everybody thinks is a nut in Nutcast, Savian, whatever it is. And then you realize the reason why he's so fervent about everything is because it's been going on forever, and no one's listening. And then he's not a nutcase; he's just someone that wants to get something done. I thought they were all extremely well placed, very effective,
and fleshed out. Are fleshed out. I mean, they were really it's like you said, like that one character. He was so pessimistic about. He goes, "Oh, so what? You're gonna do a little puff piece, get your byline, get it in there, and then you're gonna forget about me, and then And again, he became a character. Mm-hmm. And you're right, Phil. I think that there was a great service. Well, treating the victims the way that this movie treated them was done with, it gave them character. They weren't just caricature, and they weren't just, oh, woe is me, this happened to me. We got to know them, and we actually relied on being sympathetic.
I like the little note, though, about the one guy who originally came in there and said, don't use my name because I have a son, or a child, I can't remember the son. And then later on he said, you can use my name. Then, did you see him later in the movie when
he was
that
in
little,
that thing?
Yeah. I just love that insert shot of him just pushing the kid on the swing. And it's like, oh, nice little callback.
Yeah.
Marisa, go ahead.
There was a moment where one of the victims kept coming back and went to Sasha's, like, when is the story getting out? So as much as hard as it was for the victim to tell their story, they wanted people to know it. And that's what I think they highlighted as well. Even with the victims, they didn't over-dramatize what really happened. They felt real. And us as the audience watching them just feel for these characters, because that's what really happened.
Right. And it wasn't done in a television show, 1 hour, everything's going to be wrapped up in an hour.
Movie of the week.
You said it earlier. This is a procedural, and as you really, I don't want to paint this in a bad light. You understood that this was years. Like, this wasn't just, like, this didn't get wrapped up in a month. Like, this took a long time to do, and hence you can understand the frustration of the victims of this. And I think the way that this movie was paced and done was another brilliant way to bring an audience into this movie to say, this isn't an hour-long drama. This isn't a CSI kind of investigation. This is true long reporting. This is frustration.
Yeah, because how many times you say, "Oh, they got him! Oh, shoot, we need more! Oh,
right,
man, come on!"
Yeah.
Let me ask you guys this, because Keaton's arc in this whole thing is that he was the one who put out the original article in the Metro
and didn't follow up.
And exactly, and so. Did that work for you guys? Because I felt that
it worked, but it needed more. I wanted more from that. Go ahead. You're gonna.
Yeah, I mean, it just felt like one of those moments, like that whole reveal, because it was made to be, Mark Ruffalo's character. He kept being like, who do you know who?
Yeah, who got the information? Yeah, we got a mystery too. Did somebody cover it up at the newspaper? And they kind of, for me, it kind of made it look like it was Ben Bradley Jr. And I'm going, no way. But then in the end, of course, we find out that it was Keaton's character. But I just thought it would, because I thought it's a great note. I've said it a couple times there. I love the idea that they shed the spotlight on themselves and what they didn't do or what they missed. But I thought, just emotionally speaking, I thought it would have been a better note if there was when his best friend, or one of his really good friends, says, "Where were you? I was doing my job. Where were you?" And he goes, "I don't know." And it just for me, I wanted more of that arc. I just needed that. I thought it was.
He didn't feel as remorse.
Yeah, I wanted him to, kind of want to dig a little deeper about what the hell. I wanted him to dig deeper on who didn't follow up, and then for him to realize it himself and go, "Holy crap!" Because the weight of that means you could have stopped this 10 years ago, and how many people got molested in the meantime? Right. And that element to me was not really fleshed out as it could have been.
The way I sort of looked at that was, instead of that character feeling a ton of remorse and guilt, is it fueled his fire. And he became, like, when he started going to that, when he was hunting his friend down, whether it be at the bar or that party or his own home. Like, that's the way he turned that around, as that was his inspiration, so to speak. That was the catalyst to fuel anger within himself for letting that go so many years before. So yeah, that's the way at least.
No,
that's the way
I agree
look
with you.
at it.
I think that's what he was doing with it. But I wanted the moments, those moments alone where you realize, oh crap, what did I do? Why did I not see this? And then to have a realization. But is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, there's Cardinal Sean O'Malley, the Archdiocese of Boston, said that Spotlight illustrates how newspapers reports promoted the truth to deal with what was shameful and hidden. And I think in many ways, Keaton should have had that sort of same revelation. You know what I mean? Because he never.
Nice.
It was his self-realization of, as you said, that this could have been 10 years. He could have saved it. And by shedding light onto that, it just should have been a little bit more hard-hitting for him.
Well, because he was making the point where people, somebody knows, all these people, and then he realizes all these people know, and they're not doing anything about it, and they go, you knew and you didn't do anything about it. So.
I saw that moment when he saw the newspaper clipping revealed that this did happen years ago, and he didn't do anything about it. I thought that was enough for the audience member to understand that he's motivated enough to get the story now published.
No question. I'm not debating that. I'm saying I'm agreeing with it. My point is just in terms of a story arc or an emotional arc for a character, because there's no arc here for any character. If you wanted one, that would be the one, and they kind of did. But I just don't think they went far enough with it.
Especially the way, because they had a perfect build-up with Ruffalo's character. He was so angry. He's like, we got to get this out now. The Herald's going to get it, but how many people are going to go through this?
Affected.
So. My thing with Mark Ruffalo's character Resendez was we knew that. Well, number one, he seemed to. They all put in their hours investigating. Ruffalo seemed to be the most, let's just call him, passionate for getting the news out and for researching, getting the right paperwork. But it was also mentioned that it was taking toll in his personal life, his family.
Well, he was already in an apartment by himself before that story, so I'm sure just being who he is and the reporter he is has that effect. I don't know if it was necessarily this particular story. But for me, that was another moment where they could have gone a little bit more with that about the effect it was having. And they only had the one scene, like you already mentioned, with Mike and Sasha, where they talk about it. And that was the only scene where they're really kind of talking. Of course, we have the other guy, what's his name? Brian Darcy plays Matt. He's the other reporter, and when he realizes, oh my God, one of these guys lives down the street from me, we see that. But we didn't see a lot of the emotional toll it was taking on those people, very much. And it would have been nice to have shades of that.
I agree, but also because I thought that too watching it. I was like, how is it affecting the personal lives? Because we always see them alone, really at their own places. But
I think
had those
moments. She's reading the paper with
quick moments. But I think it was okay for a filmmaking standpoint or like character. It's like they still have to just get the story. They still have to do their jobs despite how it's affecting them.
But that makes it much more interesting that they have to do it when you can see what effect it's having elsewhere. I just think so.
Yeah, I agree. And especially because. As they said, like, 50-something% of our readers are Catholic, but they themselves were,
Catholics or lapsed Catholics.
They could have been affected by this.
Yes, exactly. I think that was a great argument that Resendez was making. It could have been you, it could have been me, it could have been any one of us.
Yeah. And again, just going, the importance of the story, it's like we talked about the title cards, and again, growing up in New England, like this story affected the city of Boston. It's all that was really being talked about. Phil, you had mentioned prior to starting the show, you were made aware of it, and I found it very funny. You were very aware of it because that's when, especially New England, Boston, that's when the priest jokes started. When they started coming out a lot, and being a person who went to a lot of comedy clubs at the time.
Eminem had a whole song of I done touched on everything but little boys.
Yeah, so, but that was a way in which I know Boston, the comedians jumped on that, and that was their way of, in a sense, coping. But there was a priest joke coming from a Boston comedian, or whether it would be on the radio. I mean, this was this was all over the media. Radio, television. You'd go to comedy clubs. You just couldn't escape it. And they were coming down on Cardinal Law, who was a very beloved person within the city of Boston in New England, and to take that down, and then you see that it wasn't just Boston, it was the country, it was the world.
Let me ask you this:
It still permeates today.
Because you guys, I mean, it must hurt. Number one, if you see these types of stories come out, you're like, "Ooh, that's really bad." But then to be almost made fun of. Through jokes. I mean, they're funny jokes. I mean, why do altar boys have their hair parted down the middle? Son, it's not a sin. But, all these things, it's just, you're taking missiles from every angle. Yeah. And the one thing that we haven't touched upon yet is the fact of, the core of religion is supposed to uplift. And I made mention of, Demetri wasn't a troubled youth. All these kids, for the most part, the one thread was that, they got into religion because they had really no other outlet.
Well, right. To
that point also, it's like a lot of times in the Catholic faith, not just Catholic, but other faiths too, but a lot of people, that's where they go to find their faith. Right. And that's how they cope, is by reverting or like going to church and praying. That's how they cope. And I believe that people would turn their cheek and try to just deal with it by just praying and hoping something good comes out of it.
Yeah.
A lot of people that's therapeutic for them.
Yeah, and the other thing too, the one word that we haven't mentioned about this is hypocrisy. Okay, and I think a lot of the comedians too, they used it as anger, as a backlash, because there was the seething anger that came up because the Catholic Church is supposed to be there helpful. They're supposed to be there. It's a faith. And once this news comes out, it's like the hypocrisy of what these actions meant and how they were so harmful to people. This unleashes, to a comedian, that unleashes an anger that it's like, oh my God, if you know what? Because religion really wasn't made that much fun of when you think about it until a lot of this started coming out. And then it was open season. It's like, if there's going to be that kind of hypocrisy, then you know what? We're just going to let you have it. And a lot of that stems from today. And then today we still have, there is still, religious or humor that goes against religion in that type of a way. I think things have changed with the new Pope and things. Things are a little bit more transparent, but there still seems to be a long way to go.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, clearly. But, I haven't really been looking at this movie because this movie is really about the journalism in it, not necessarily the actual victims and all that other stuff. There are plenty of documentaries, really good ones about the whole thing, which are really good to watch if you're at all interested in it. It's just horrendous, of course, naturally. But what I'm impressed by is that they were able to use that, but that's not what they were focusing on. They were really focusing on the journalism, which is a story that hasn't been told. And speaking of that journalism, you just mentioned the new Pope. I think the new Pope is in a large part in a reaction because of this story. Mm-hmm. Because when that thing broke and then all things, the veil is pulled back, it's like, ooh, we really got to get our house in order. And I mean, let's face it, the PR machine that the Pope has been really good for the Catholic Church based on where they were in terms of their PR image.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because of this horrible.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Marisa, any thoughts?
It's just, while watching this, it's just so upsetting the lengths that the Catholic Church went through to cover this up.
Yeah.
And to, I don't want to keep saying this, turn the other cheek and sweep it under the rug. It's like, to me, that's not Catholic. To me, that's not moral. And that's what's so contradictory with the Catholicism, and not just Catholics, but like this particular faith that they preach so many things, but then go against what they preach just to help save themselves.
But here's the
here's
the irony. You could say turn the other cheek, but you could call it forgiveness. I mean, can you, like, in some demented way? Yes.
I get what you're saying.
That's also
Absolutely,
one of the
you call it
arguments,
though. But you can't allow it to continue. because then you're perpetrating this in yourself.
But
Yeah.
it goes
And
above and
that's-
beyond turning the other cheek and forgiveness. It's cover up.
Right.
I mean, literally moving priests. Like, no, okay, well, we're just going to move them.
Just shuffle you.
Yeah, we're going to shuffle them around.
And that's what's also so frustrating is that, oh, it's okay, he'll just confess his sins and no one will have to know about it. Like, that's not good enough. In this case, that is so not good enough.
The other thing I was really enjoying about this is how they portrayed the church doing the cover-up. It was the whole, let's have a drink together and let's chat, or let's get on the same page on this. The church has done a lot of good for this community, and all these insidious ways of getting their way without being blatant. And also they didn't really show it, but they talked about how they're gonna crucify you and your reputation's gonna be just slaughtered. And then Garabedian says, "Look, don't take any notes. I'm not paranoid. I'm experienced." All that kind of stuff. And I'm just thinking that was wonderful to see, because there are a lot of ways that power and influence can be wielded, and just the way Cardinal Law had his meeting with Barron was that this this is making his point by still being this wonderfully grandfatherly character. Yeah, exactly. About the catechism. Nice. Yeah. Thank you very much. I'm Jewish. Yeah. So, I mean, it's just horrible. And I love the way Mike Keaton, his character Robbie, says, "This is the way it's done, isn't it? We come in here, we have a drink together, and pretty soon."
But again, just even that scene alone, the arguments were logical. Like, this, as we mentioned before, Barron, he just comes in, he's not going to be part of the community, and he just wants one big story, and then he's out. So, again, logical.
That's what you'd think, but he's not.
No, not at all. Not one bit. Speaking of...
he wanted to make the paper more responsive to the needs of the reader.
Let's talk about Jack Dunn, who he did not like his portrayal in this movie.
Yes, he was one of the faculty, or was
Boston
Boston College High School?
Member of the board of the Boston College High School.
Yeah, not happy with the way he was portrayed.
Now, do you think there's a little bit of truth in that, or is it just literally bitterness?
I think it's bitterness. I think he probably, I don't know, because obviously I wasn't there, but I mean, I'm sure he's bitter about the way it was portrayed, because it was not portrayed in the best light. Whether or not it was true, I don't know. Of course, Sasha and Robbie are firmly standing behind their recollections of their meeting, saying that, no, he pretty much wanted to frame it as, I'm just trying to do right by my institution. There's really not much going on here. Well, he didn't take the allegation seriously.
It's an interesting.
But who's to know? We weren't there.
Well, yeah, and that's
what
makes it.
But here's the thing: they would have notes on it for the most.
Yeah.
Like out of the three of them, Robbie
they're
and
the
Sasha.
ones that took the notes. Yeah.
Yeah. So come on.
I know. I mean, I tend to think that they're probably more accurate, but I wasn't there. But I think if you're taking notes and there's two of them, and I don't think they don't really. To me, they didn't. I haven't read anything that would suggest that they have a bias against this guy or any kind of axe to grind again, or in any way want to hurt or smear his reputation. But I can certainly see why he would be upset the way he was portrayed, because he is not on the right side of this.
No, and according to Dunn, and I'm quoting, and there was a great article about this specific thing in the Boston Globe. Which he is quoted as saying things they had me saying in this movie I never said, but worse is the way they had me saying those things, like I didn't care about the victims, that I tried to make the story go away. The dialogue assigned to me is completely fabricated and represents the opposite of who I am and what I did on behalf of the victims. It makes me look callous and indifferent. And this is a guy. He's a longtime spokesman for Boston College, which was his alma mater. He is on the board of trustees at Boston College High School, from which he graduated. And it just seems, could there be a little bit of truth in it? I mean, usually in a scene like that, sometimes, they need to make someone, quote unquote, the villain for the obstacle.
You said, the clerk is the bad guy. But did you guys? I didn't think he was portrayed as being horribly callous. I didn't really read that scene that way. I read that as this guy, his job is to protect the institution, and that's what he's trying to do.
Right.
I didn't really see him. Well,
but here's
that's
what
my
I would say.
interpretation of it.
I would say, if you didn't like your portrayal, that's fine. Maybe the dialogue, but what did you actually do?
Yeah,
Give me
that I
some
don't know.
action that you did, and that's why Keaton's character, he felt bad that he did not do anything. So in this movie, in this instance, if you're not doing something to help actively, then you're by default,
and you're aware of it. Yeah, you gotta.
So
Yeah, and I guess one of the points too, there's the scene. His dialogue is, in talking with Robbie, he's like, "It's a big school, Robbie. You know that." And we're talking about 7 alleged victims over what, 8 years. To him, he was like, in real life, he goes, "I never said that." He goes, "In fact," he drew up the school board's of trustees a 4-point plan to address these allegations in transparency and compassion. So. It's a weird.
But we don't know when he did that either.
We don't,
because that could have been a reaction later. We don't know. Maybe. But,
no, it's true.
Right.
But it's one of those movie things that we sort of have to. This is a biopic,
and they both have had their say on it.
They've had
They
their
both
say,
have say, and it's left up to us to decide.
Right.
I think also from a storytelling standpoint, throughout this film, we're seeing the people who are trying to find the answers and, go through all those steps, but we realize who the people were responsible for it. And despite him being one of the people who knew about it but couldn't do enough to do something about it, by extension made him somewhat responsible for still allowing all these things to happen. So I can understand why he feels upset. He personally feels upset that he doesn't want to be the person who was also responsible for this.
He mounted the defense in early 2002. After the article. So, I mean, unless the article came out January 6th, 2002. So unless he did it January 5th.
Right.
But even then, at that point, for the most part, they had pretty much warned everybody, hey, this article is coming out. Would you like to comment?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
And I think for a lot of the movie, they're saying that with this kind of horrible crime being perpetrated, there are a lot of people who are accountable.
Exactly.
People who turned away, people who allowed it, people who did it. I mean, and it really is about the village.
Yeah.
It's this happened on our watch, and a lot of us knew something.
Right.
Might not have known everything, but we knew something.
Yeah.
But didn't do enough.
Yeah, and I mean, even the whole German reference that Resendez makes, it's that's pretty close.
Right.
Differs in degree, but not in kind.
Yeah. So there were, and when I go into a movie like this, especially in recent years, there is an artistic license.
Yeah.
We know that we are telling a story. And again, that one particular scene that we're talking about that took place at a Boston College boardroom or office.
Boston College High School, though.
Boston College High School.
Yeah.
There was a character in that scene that was a fictional character.
Right.
As well. So when I read things like that, then I do wonder, there is sort of an artistic license being taken. I mean, I do understand we're making a movie. I do not believe that Spotlight is as egregious in saying that it made up characters who actually affected the outcome of our main characters like that. It did not do. And, if you're putting a person who's in a boardroom that may not have been there, I'm sort of like that I'm okay with, so long as that made up character didn't really affect an arc or the outcome of one of our main characters' plight. Everybody else in this movie seems to be pretty real, they're real people. And how they're portrayed, again, we are in a 2+ hour movie here. We have to get a story across, get themes done. I really think that Spotlight is not as egregious as other movies have been in the past.
Let's turn the table a little bit, right? So the Boston Globe was very helpful in this entire movie, and in fact, Demetri, you said that they had articles just about the whole process of the actual original.
They were fantastic. Most of my research is from the Boston Globe.
Yeah.
But let me ask this: kind of in that way, does it ruin the integrity of what this movie is trying to accomplish? Because
they're part of the process?
Yeah, but you might as well call it a branded movie for the Boston Globe.
Sure. It depends on how much integrity you think. I mean, it's a movie. It's not a documentary. So anybody that's thinking it's going to be factual 100% of the time, I think you're going in with the wrong idea. So I don't really I'm not exactly sure. You have to go to the source if you want good information. They were the source. So they kind of have to be involved to some degree if you want to try to get that accurate.
And I also believe, too, as far as the integrity of journalism, if writer-director come to you and say, look, we're going to make this movie about your stories about the Catholic Church, I can understand red flags going up because, well, how are you going, which side are you taking on? And if the director and writer say, but what we really want to focus on the procedure. We want to focus on the process. We want to ensure that we get that above and beyond anything else right. And through that story, we're going to re-expose the story in which you exposed for the first time that became this whole global event. And we want to make sure we're doing it right.
And across the board, journalisms are saying, yeah, that's pretty much how it goes.
Yep, across the board.
I wasn't there for this story, but this is pretty much how the process. And
so I think in this case, to your question, Phil,
as opposed to newsroom, remember everybody was going crazy about how this is not a newsroom.
Yeah.
A lot of hate viewing on that.
Yeah,
It's a great show, though.
You know, but to your question, Phil, I think that with the Globe's participation in the way that they did it, they were protecting their asses too. I mean, they wanted to make sure that, you know, and they also allowed the fact that, you know, they put the spotlight on themselves.
Yeah.
Saying, you know what, we didn't act fast enough. We didn't act fast enough, and there were lots that we missed. And so I give the Boston Globe credit because sometimes a publication may not want that getting out there. But I think because you see the foibles, it makes it more humanistic. It makes a better story.
Fair enough. I just felt it deserved to be
it's
discussed.
Because you're right. Because it could have been movie branding. It's like what a great 2-hour advertising for the Boston Globe. You know what? I want to sign up online and get the.
That would have been great. Title card at the end. Get your free Boston Globe.
Yeah,
it was. It was a great brand for the Boston
I think
Globe.
it just also adds just.
But I don't think the filmmakers were shills for them.
Yeah, I think it just adds to the research because we have a whole movie saying how in depth in the research they went, that the information that they released about this movie, us as the audience and the readers and the consumers were already led to believe that this information about the movie is already accurate because they were so accurate the first hand with their big story.
Right. Yeah.
Indeed.
So, if anything, I believe the Boston Globe in journalism, this type of journalism comes off like looking really great. Like this is what can be done with, you know, hard work, the elbow grease, the time put into it. We want you to know that this is what research.
This is why we want.
Right.
This is what we want journalism to do.
Right. Absolutely.
Let's take a quick. One of the things that we didn't talk about was the actual script and the process of that, because it ended up on the good old famous Blacklist
2013.
And you know what? I don't know the stat, but it seems like more and more of these Blacklist movies are being made, which is great.
I think they're getting it. It's like, good scripts out there. Whoa, wait a minute. Let's look at those.
Yeah.
There's a whole top 10 list of these good scripts out there. Let me get involved.
Well, here's the question, though. Is this because this isn't tied into a particular book, right? But but
it has all that source material.
Right. So it's not an original script. It's an adapted screenplay.
No, it would be considered an original script.
It would be.
Because they didn't. Yeah, they're not picking their material from the paper. The story's already there.
Right.
So.
Okay.
But the only source material they have on actually what was transpired in those meetings are the people. So it's all original material.
Yeah. Fascinating.
So.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. And so I thought that was great. To see. Also, one of the things that we didn't talk about 9/11 and how that was portrayed in this movie. I thought that was really interesting because obviously it happened. It affected them.
Yeah.
I love how they mentioned it, and it just reminded us where they are in their research in that time period. Because if you remember when 9/11 happened, all the publications and all the newspapers put a hold on everything else. And all the stories for the next 2 to 3 months was all still about 9/11. So it also just added why the story took so long to get out there, because even otherworldly events took place.
Yeah.
So, and I loved how they didn't touch too much about it, but it made the viewers well aware like just how long and how much they wanted to get the story out, but they just couldn't because of other things.
Felt horrible for Saviano's like, come on.
Yeah, and again, it's one of those things. It's a part of history. It's a piece of exposition because, again, to your point, it does say they had to put a halt on this, and again, it's more or less stretching out the time because how long does it take before your subject matter just grows cold, and to their being inspired and not letting it go cold and staying on this and keeping on this and working those hours to put into it, and it also it sets up a time frame as well. It's a great framework, screenplay wise. It did happen, but they used it as a timepiece to say, holy crap, yeah, that happened too, and this is going to stretch things out even more. Wow, it's a lot.
Also, not to get off of 9/11, but even that, because had 9/11 not happened, they released that information, it would have been before Christmas. And I loved how they had the moment in the film. They're like, we can't release it this week.
Nobody wants to
because
release
it's
it on
Christmas.
Christmas.
And as we know, Christmas is a very Christian Catholic time. And to have a scandal like this be released near Christmas, we can't have that. So even that helped push the story even a few more weeks.
Yeah.
Let's wait for Easter.
Yeah, let's do that.
Oh boy.
Maybe
worldly
Lent would be
things.
better. Do Lent.
Let's talk kind of production. Let's talk cinematography. We'll talk music and stuff like that. Demetri, you were noting how the cinematographer was the same one from Black Mass.
Yeah, which is obviously I'm hoping that I do not butcher his name. It's
luck.
Masanobu Takayanagi. Okay, Masanobu Takayanagi. Now, yeah, he worked on Black Mass. And again, one of the things when you watched the Black Mass podcast we did talk about how cinematography really captured that side of the city, and they did it in a very 70-ish feel. This movie, I think, it's almost like a sequel because we come so many years later. And again, the way that he captures Boston, he does a really great job. He captures winter the way winter can be in that city. It's frozen slush. I felt the grays, I felt the cold, and he captured all of that. I thought he did a very great job in the way that this movie looked, in lighting, in coloring, in shading.
Yeah, because in theory, it's a very, especially the globe, it's a very boring palette. It's all just pretty much white and gray, and they're wearing white and gray, and so how do you make that look anything of interest?
Yeah.
I think the actual shots, there were so many shots within the film that showed the juxtapositions of kids and a church all in the same shot, and it was over and over and over again. It showed the audience just how close they were to the story physically, that they didn't even know that this was going on. It was so clear,
Just a few shots
clear
of
cut.
churches everywhere. They're talking to people, and then in the background there's a church.
There's a
in the
church.
corner there's a background.
There's a playground right next to
all
a
over the
church.
place. Yeah, it's crazy.
And
Which
I
pro-
love
and-
that.
Which, by the way, ironically, is by design, but also go to Boston.
Exactly, it's everywhere.
Churches are everywhere.
Right.
The only
also-
thing that there's more of is colleges.
and Irish pubs and bars.
There you go.
Yeah.
I also thought they did a lot. There was a lot of walk and talk scenes, which and we had a lot of in a few of them because Keaton were in them. I was thinking Birdman because we had a lot of going to this door, going to the hallway, coming out, going to the stairway. It's like we're back in Birdman. But it adds to the documentary feel kind of it because it does have somewhat of a realistic kind of. I mean, there isn't a lot of. Let's do our two shot. Let's do our over the shoulder. I mean, it's pretty fluent.
But you brought up a scene earlier in our show. That scene where at the computer. And, oh my God, I can't. And the computers didn't have the vibrancy that they have today.
Yeah.
And that scene again, I felt that the interiors, whether it was at somebody's house, whether it was at the Boston Globe. Really, too, were you're right. There was a realism. Not that it was a documentary, but there was a realism as to how this was shot, and I loved his color palette. He made the city. It was also. It could almost be said as a film noir. We know that there's this undercurrent,
Underbelly.
this underbelly, and we know that this took place during summers, but he made sure that certain scenes were like as gray because it was wintertime. It could have been January. It was January. They work on this.
Like you said, it's great. But yeah, I have to say, I one of the reasons why I love newsroom movies. I mean, I Absence of Malice, All the President's Men, even the paper. I just love that newsroom.
Paper too. Yeah,
I just love those things. All the deaths, everybody's crazy and stuff. We didn't have a lot of that in this, but we had just enough. So, but I just love that stuff.
Yeah,
I don't know why.
Well, that's the interesting part. You know, unlike most of these things, you know, there's no like, hey, we got to get the paper out by 5 p.m. or whatever.
Yeah,
we
didn't have
but
that.
you had to have the self motivation.
Yeah.
To keep pushing
get
for over a year.
Get it right. Yeah.
and you know, John, go ahead. No,
only because I was going to say, you know, when you're like, oh, I have a whole year to do this story. Oh man, and then like by 10 months into, you're like, oh crap, I got to do some stuff.
Yeah, but as Marisa was saying, you knew that the longer I'm on this story, the more likely somebody else is going to get it, especially when those papers become public.
Right. Well, here's something interesting because you just mentioned a bunch of movies about what was influenced, and some of those movies. There was one movie you hadn't mentioned, The Verdict, with Paul Newman,
which is
also
procedural, but not a newsroom one.
Not a newsroom one. Not a true story either, but yet
directed by Sidney Lumet.
Sidney Lumet, and he goes, "That's the style I wanted."
Yeah.
And when you think about it,
yeah, it was very
watch The Verdict,
absolutely.
and this could be a companion piece to The Verdict. Although we have,
as I was watching, I didn't even know this. As I'm watching it, I was feeling this is like a Sidney Lumet movie. I was so weird because I don't know why I don't usually go to that, but for some reason I did, and I go, "Wow, okay, look at that."
Yeah, and you know when you look, you mentioned the paper because. Because they mentioned
Keaton
the paper. Keaton was in the paper. Yeah. I was at Universal, and I like the paper. It's a good movie.
But he's a Metro reporter there.
Oh, right, he is. And obviously, Broadcast News was another one. Network, obviously, All the President's Men, and I think that's the closest comparison because that's just another true story.
Yeah. With Bradley in it, Ben Bradley in it.
Right.
So
and then you had The Killing Fields, The Insider, Citizen Kane, even. Like in a lot of these movies, too, are taking...
Insider, I hadn't thought about that, but I can see that, yeah.
And it really, obviously, like we said, The Verdict, Good Night and Good Luck. You know, Ace in the Hole. Ace in the Hole is another great... Ace in the Hole is a great Billy Wilder, Kirk Douglas. I mentioned that during the 33, because it's a great... I recommend either rent it, go buy the Criterion disc. Ace in the Hole is a great movie about journalism. But I really appreciated this, and I closely compare it again to All the President's Men because this really is, it was true. And what effect did great journalism have on society and how it was done?
Well, I thought it was interesting too the parallel they made to All the President's Men at the end because they had their epilogue. Here's what happens, and then they show all those cities on the screen. They and All the President's Men had the teletype, which I thought was an interesting. It was to me it was an homage to that.
Yeah.
So speaking of teletype and homages. The typeface was the Boston Globe's typeface.
Yeah, and for those people who are watching this too, because we talked about this, about the title cards at the end, that so the movie ends, that first title card comes up, and you're like, oh, okay, wow, you still go, wow, that's pretty shitty. All right, it's time to go. And then all of a sudden, whoa, the next title card comes up, and you're like, okay, then another one comes up, and you're like, all right, I guess I'm not leaving. Holy crap, this is
there goes
powerful.
My Saturday.
Yep. Powerful. Well, very powerful.
What I liked about that, because even the title cards, it started with our own country of America, and then how it expanded globally to the Philippines on the other side of the world. And I was like, and as a Filipino, I was like, holy crap, there's so many cases in the Philippines where this happened.
Can't even go there anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like even the Filipino culture, I don't know the exact percent, but so many are Catholic.
Well, the other reason why I thought it was so effective is because due to the fact that they chose to do a procedural about journalism rather than a story about the victims so much, they had the victims, but it wasn't really, they didn't spend a lot of their time on that. At the end there, you got to realize, oh, that's right. Because if it was 70 priests, I don't know how many victims off those 70 priests, but 70 priests in one city. And then you have all these cities around the world. How many, we don't even know how many priests in those cities.
Right.
And then just exponentially, you just kind of go, that's when, to me, that's when you go, oh my God, that's right. Those cities represent how many victims.
And victims, and then the shuffling.
Oh.
It's like when you go to, like one of the lesser casinos in like a Vegas or something, and the way that they shuffle the cards is, they put all the cards on the table and they do this to shuffle. That's in a sense
Still there.
Yeah, that's how it, more or less how it was. It's like, oh, well, he's going to go over here. This is how we're going to shuffle it up. Another thing that I think is important in this movie is the editing. Tom McArdle, who edited this movie, we're talking about how this movie is not a, there's tedium to journalism, which I think this movie brings to light to an extent, but it makes it, this movie, I hung in there.
Yeah.
Because it did create a suspense. It created a kinetic energy, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And I felt that a lot of that was due to editing.
I think it was. But you got to give credit to the writing and the directing and then the acting, too, because it was all. But it was moving and everything like that. But the fact that because those actors were doing such a good job with everything, because let's face it, a lot of what they were giving you was just expos. This happened here, this happened here, oh my God, this guy. And it was still fascinating and compelling, even though it's not character so much, it's expos.
Right.
Mm-hmm. He's just telling you the story, and you're going, and I know the story.
Right.
So it wasn't really like it was new information.
Right.
I felt like every scene, there was not a scene that went too long. Because, again, with you saying kinetic energy, every scene you see them doing something, they're moving, they're getting a story out there. They're telling us a detail.
Why they had all those walk and talks.
One of the most slowest scenes was one of the biggest expos in this movie. It was, when they're all sitting in the globe and they get the actual percentage of how many priests would be in an area, and they realize it's the number 90. But you see that slow pan back, just like the slow, sad realization of everything. Even that was a long, slow shot, but there's so much there. So much there.
Yeah. So, I mean, it just, again, this isn't it's a very deliberately paced movie, but yet it sets up its own tension, even though we know the story. Yeah. So I do feel that editing, because it's.
And he also worked with McCarthy on Win-Win.
The Station Agents.
Yeah. So, and he obviously. McCarthy likes to work with those people. He's worked with them on a number of his films.
Right. So. And then, of course, we should talk a little bit about music, because you mentioned montage, place with the music, which makes... Now, in a Rocky movie, montage and music is used to a different effect. Right. Where in this... Right. No, agreed. But it's used to different effect than how, Howard Shore, who's known for doing the Lord of the Rings movies and The Hobbit. This is a little bit more... Let's say
he also did Hugo.
Not as huge.
He also worked on Doubt. It was another.
Another big film.
Yeah. So he knows how to, he can be fully orchestral, or he can make just a great soft bed that doesn't overtake what's happening on screen.
I don't think it ever got in the way of anything. Nope. I think it really enhanced.
Yeah.
There were moments. I mean, in terms of the mixing, I felt like there were some times when they kind of drowned out the dialogue in lieu of the music, because whatever they were saying was sort of unimportant at that point.
Yeah, it was more expos, and it was so letting the music handle the emotional part of it, because we already know we don't need to know the specifics of what they're saying. We get it's more about the same story.
Yeah. So I know that we talked. Well, we did say that we all liked the performances, but I wouldn't mind breaking it down. Was there a favorite performance that you had? I wouldn't mind breaking down some of the performances, because I really think that they...
Well, I love Stanley Tucci just because he usually is playing something... Well, I mean, I love him when he's doing his crazy stuff. I think he's fabulous. But I also love him when he's doing his quieter stuff. In the Pelican Brief, when he played the assassin, I thought he was amazing. Mm-hmm. Even and a bunch of others. But I liked him in this because he was playing somebody who was, when they say wasn't a people person, and he wasn't a people person. I just liked seeing him in it. I don't know why. I thought he did a fabulous job, and it was to a large degree, even though he was a curmudgeon.
Right. I liked... here's the thing. When you go from... he's known as Sabretooth in the X-Men series.
I know. Here's the other guy I was going to talk about.
Yeah. Marty Baron.
And he was so just measured in everything he did. It was like, wow, that's really good. It's really good.
And here's the thing. He's supposed to be for all intents and purposes, a hotshot guy, and just seeing him lead a room, he seemed very unsure of himself.
Well, yeah,
wasn't really commanding. He's like, I guess we should start. Why don't we start with you?
The meeting when he's with Robbie and Robbie's boss, Ben Bradley Jr., and he's going, so I was thinking maybe Spotlight should take a look at this.
Right.
Well, we do this. And he goes, well, is this something you could consider? I mean, you're the boss. Just tell him what to do. Yeah. But this the way he was doing it, kind of allowing them to come to that decision.
Yeah.
I thought that was a very effective way to manage them.
Yeah.
And again, too, that character was coming in, with the premise of potentially being a hatchet man. Yeah. So there was already, on the employee side, there was a contention against this guy because it's like, well, how do we work with him? And like we're already, it's tough too because again, you're in Boston, okay? And they're very set in their ways. It's like, well, this is the way. It's like, hey, buddy, we're gonna teach you how to do things, and it's
the Boston way.
The Boston way. And, you're working at the Boston Globe. We have our, we're this newspaper, we're these reporters. We're going to do this police corruption thing. And he just comes in as like, well, I think you should do something. It's this guy's conflict of trying to tell these guys, well, I think there's a bigger story.
Did you get a hint at all when he was saying that? Do you think at any of the characters, because I don't think anyone voiced this opinion, but I was thinking he's Jewish, he's trying to mess with the Catholic here. Did you think that they were concerned about that? Because they didn't discuss that at all. We just thought that energy was there. I thought that dynamic was playing.
No, I didn't see that at all. I saw him as a character who saw a good potential story. Mm-hmm. It's like, hey, we should actually focus on this, dedicated team to it. I saw that's what a good leader should point out, especially because, he's new. He searches for all the good potential stories that the Globe could be out there. So that's what I saw. I saw someone in a leadership role.
Well, just the fact of him saying, X amount of people are Catholics of our readership. It's like, okay, this is pertinent information. It'd be like if the water you were drinking is poisoned. Wouldn't you want to put that story out there so you can tell people, hey, don't drink the water?
Action.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, for me, performance-wise, Slattery too was very good. But I do point out, I'm not alone. A lot of people are looking at Mark Ruffalo's performance in this, and he's had some year. I mean, this is the guy that plays the Hulk,
right?
But it's so amazing to see him, and he loves this position of being in where he can take these movies and. He's come to the realization, like, I don't have to take them because I think they're going to get me an award. I take them because I think they're really great parts, and, I want to dig into these. And I felt, like, one of the best performances in his career. Like, this has Oscar nomination potential for Best Supporting Actor.
I wasn't even nominated for a SAG Award.
Or for Golden Globe. Golden Globe. Which was really surprising.
I think that's just a testament to the ensemble itself. These are all just true actors. We can all name each of them individually and say the most outrageous character they've ever portrayed. But on the other spectrum, they can play the most serious, dramatic characters, such as this movie. Yeah. And I think that's just a testament to their talent, to their acting ability. It's like, I don't care what kind of crazy over-the-top actor you've played. You did such a great job in this film.
And I didn't feel either that each one was going for the spotlight.
I don't think anyone...
I really think that it was very ensemble-ish. Yeah. They worked together as a team, and nobody... again, for ensemble acting, for ensemble casting...
But in some ways, here's the thing. If you're fighting for the spotlight in some sort of way, it just elevates everyone's game.
It can or it comes off as they're chewing up all the scenery.
You're forcing.
Yeah.
So it's like if you're in a chorus and you're trying to sing the lead, and it's like then the chorus doesn't sound good.
Fair enough.
Just one more point to that. The director, Tom McCarthy, he says, quote, "It is ensemble quality, great at feeding off of each other, taking turns on taking lead/center stage."
Yeah.
So just... Again, ensemble, because you can look at this film and be like, "Hey, this person was the main character."
Yeah. I don't know who the main character was.
Exactly.
Cardinal Law.
It's story. I asked a friend of mine.
All just so good across the board.
Right. It's like, well, if you break it down, I mean, who is the lead actor? Is it Keaton?
Yeah.
I mean,
in a traditional sense, it would be the character that goes through the greatest change, and I don't think that you have one here.
Yeah.
I don't think they were shooting for a quote,
right,
a normal structure.
So, but if there is a best actor nod and a best supporting actor and actress would be, Rachel McAdams.
Yeah, I wouldn't consider her lead.
But would Michael Keaton be the lead? Would Liev Schreiber be the lead?
No, I don't think you have a lead in this.
You don't.
But if you got to nominate somebody, who do you point
I don't. I wouldn't. I was just saying, no, we don't have a lead actor in this, or an actress. It's an
That'll be It'll be interesting if and how that pans out. We really
Rachel
haven't.
McAdams got a SAG Award in nomination for a female actress.
Lead or supporting?
For supporting role.
Supporting.
Yeah.
But she's the only one individually.
And again, she was portrayed.
I think she's the only female, pretty much.
She is. But also, to that point, Rachel McAdams, in her research on Sasha, actually, she said about Sasha that Sasha never really worked as being the only woman in, employee out of this. She was also an equal. She was working on the same story, getting other aspects of the story that the other guys couldn't. So she never saw herself as just the woman. She saw herself just as part of the team as well.
And I think that that's another good point, because that lends to this ensemble category, is that they played like they worked as a team. There wasn't a person on there who wanted to take more of the
player coach.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
they even used the terminology.
Yeah. That was very good. We should talk a little bit too regarding how this movie was distributed. We can talk a little bit about budget, grosses, public perception, critical
I don't have
response.
the budget. What's the budget on this thing?
Budget is estimated
20,
to be
right?
around $20 million.
You're kidding.
20.
Wow.
About $20 million.
That's surprising.
So that's what I've found for a production budget. So the rule of thumb is you're usually throwing in, your studio is usually going to kick in around 30 plus. Mm-hmm. This is Open Road. Open Road released this movie. Mm-hmm. My guess is all in, they were probably somewhere around between 35 and 45. All in. I mean, there's going to be there's going to be an Oscar campaign, so that's going to go into the to the hard drives and advertising of this movie. I think that the groundswell of this movie is slowly picking up.
Oh yeah.
Regardless of not getting a Mark Ruffalo nod on the
but
Golden
everybody
Globes.
that's seeing it, I mean, my God, they're acclaim across the board, so everybody's loving this thing.
So and they released it in a very they did a limited release, and then they're going wide. We're looking at currently they're on their domestic gross lifetime. It opened on November 6th. We should note, so it's been around for just a little over a month, and they're at about 18 million. Right now, not too shabby. You got to remember that they only opened up on that November 6th. They're only opening up at like 5 theaters. Yeah. So and now they're
they've
about
only been wide for
800.
like 2 weeks, right? 3 weeks, maybe.
Yeah, and now we're at about over 1,000.
Right.
We're over 1,000. 1,089 locations. So.
But even that's very low.
Right.
In numbers.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There was a time when 1,000 was a wide release. So.
Well, I mean, if you consider the source material or what the film's about, I think it's doing really well.
Absolutely.
Because whether you think it's about the priest scandal or you think it's about journalism, I mean, it's not like let's go rush to this.
Right.
But the performances and the script and everything, I mean, it's so worth it that I can
It's a
see
good
why
thing.
people, everybody, it's a critical darling, it's a fan favorite. I mean,
98%.
I mean, the Spotlight. I mean, when you first hear of this, you're like, what the hell, Spotlight?
yeah.
What kind of title is Spotlight? And here's the thing: I don't know journalism, and kudos to the Boston Globe. They have the longest continuous running
Investigative journalism.
Yeah, through but I didn't know what the hell it meant.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell is Spotlight? I'm glad within the first minute of the movie they explained what the hell Spotlight is. You're like, why is it called Spotlight?
Right. And to that point, that's also, I think, why this film does so well. It's about the team who were part of the Spotlight.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, they're, unleashing or and revealing, the scandal behind it. But it's not just about the scandal. That's just what they were working on. It's about the team and what went into it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's also what helps just make this film.
Yeah, I agree.
About the people.
Yeah, and like we said, 98% on Rotten Tomatoes. That's a very high, rare number.
And then the audience score is not too far off of that.
It's 97. 97?
Yeah, 96, 97, whatever.
I put it at that.
It's
very
hard.
rare. Usually there's a 20-point gap between the critics and the audience.
Well,
I would definitely
but
give
the
it
other,
that high.
The cool thing about this too is it really does show for the moviegoer, for the avid movie fan. When you have a movie like Spotlight come out, this is great because this isn't made. This isn't for the Hunger Games crowd. Okay,
right.
Hunger Games is going to do what it does. That's fantastic. But it's great to see that people will latch on to this and see a movie like this because The Verdict, all those other movies that we mentioned before were powerful, great performance movies. They were made at a different time, so the way movie going is today has changed so much. So it's great that a movie like Spotlight will get an older audience and they'll come in and they'll appreciate. And it's not just about the slamming of the Catholic Church. There is so much. It really is about this. It's set up as such a great procedural that I think that's what makes this movie
Well, to
work.
that point, the Boston Globe is launching a $100,000 fellowship to encourage investigative journalism.
Nice. Yeah.
Now, ultimately, that's not the highest, but you know what? It's certainly a start. I mean, that's very, very generous. Trust
Absolutely.
me. So,
Absolutely.
I don't know how you apply or how it all works, but it's in.
Maybe you should do some research on that and look into it.
We look into it.
If I figure it out, then I get the fellowship.
Exactly.
Yeah, you can go on to boston.com. I'm sure you'll find something. bostonglobe.com, though.
I think I'll go to Boston Globe, the source of the fellowship.
So,
There you go.
yeah, I mean, I don't know where else. Was there something else you were going to broach?
Just for,
Well,
it's already getting a lot of acclaim.
Yes.
Yeah,
A
let's
lot
talk
of
about that
nominations.
because we're in the thrust of award season.
Absolutely.
Oscar nominations aren't out yet, but SAG and Golden Globes are. So
And
we've
Spirit.
So do they? We talked about you can't really have a lead actor. You can't pinpoint one, but do you think they should just automatically have more?
Yeah, they'll probably put Michael Keaton as put that forward as a lead, and they'll put Ruffalo forward as supporting.
Yeah.
for Oscars.
Yeah.
but they haven't so far.
No, I don't think they have.
No.
Do you think there's going to be a trend of what we've seen to what the Oscars will be, or will it just go drastic?
I think that the Oscars are going to look at this more seriously than the Golden Globes.
Yes, I agree. I won't get into it on this show, but I don't know. The Golden Globes they were just all. The Martian is a musical or comedy. That should say enough.
Yeah, but we can look at it this way. I mean, the Golden Globes, obviously are the international press, right? Foreign press, I should say. I don't think the people who put together this movie probably did a lot of press for the foreign press, or did a lot of courting of them, because I don't know how well it's going to play internationally.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe
either.
it is. Maybe it is. I don't know.
I'm sure
the
it's
Vatican is going to play wonderfully.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my goodness.
So
gonna play
maybe they
great
didn't
in
spend
Rome.
a lot of time with the foreign press, and therefore the foreign press said, nah, so.
Yeah, no, I mean, for me, this movie is top 3. Okay, I have to reserve.
It was at Toronto as well.
Yeah. So for me, it's definitely top 3. I agree with you. I believe the Oscars are going to look at this a little bit more seriously than what
It's
the
great
Golden Globes are.
filmmaking, so.
It
But
really
also,
is.
to that point, Golden Globes covers both television and movies. So it's not like the whole focus.
Right.
But Academy Awards is the whole focus is about
Yeah.
film. So I think the Academy Awards, to everybody's point, they're going to scrutinize this film more than Spirit or SAG or Golden Globes.
Yeah, and but I'm going to throw this out there. There is a wild card that, to my knowledge, like not a whole hell of a lot of, or not many people have yet seen.
What's that?
Well, there's this little movie called Star Wars coming out, and we don't know how good or
what's that
maybe
called?
not so good. Star Wars Sisters and Alvin and the Chipmunks. No, but we don't know. Like, that's why I almost have a top 3, but there's this one movie that has not yet been seen. I don't know where that's going to fit in. And to be quite honest, you can't, as of yet, say that this isn't a picture that could potentially get this kind of press. I mean, this hasn't been mentioned in the Golden Globes. It hasn't been mentioned anywhere. I'm just thinking because either people have seen it and they have a gag rule and they can't. I don't know. So, but
You think
Spotlight
Star Wars?
definitely. Huh?
I don't think that. I just can't even see anybody putting Star Wars up except for technical things.
Yeah.
Even without even seeing it, because it never is
Editing.
considered. You know,
In
Visual
1977, it
effects.
sure was. I mean, so I don't foresee. Again, I
Yeah,
don't
but the
know.
impact
That
was
was
so
40
different.
years ago.
But I am going to argue that well, we can talk about it on our Star Wars show. I don't want to spend a ton of time. I'm just throwing that it's the white
Wait,
elephant
we're covering
in the
Star
room.
Wars? This is news to me.
At some point, I hope. I'm just
to
saying
that point,
we
Star Wars
don't
won't
know.
go as in depth emotionally as for
don't know.
characters as this film did.
I don't disagree, but it's a very unknown for me. That's why I can't even put it in my top 3, my top 5, my top 10. I don't know where it lands, and I'm always one that urges Academy voters. You can't forget commercial films that do well,
absolutely
that
not,
are
but-
actually good.
But
And
speaking
this
of
is a very
film,
good movie.
Yeah, don't you think
I
that
do.
of the 10 they're gonna there's
Yes.
gonna be 10 this year again? Or is it
Yeah,
gonna be 8?
yeah,
I
no,
can't
it's good.
remember. Whatever.
who
It's going to be
But
up
to
to
that-
10, but they'll
Exactly.
choose
But-
Yeah, they go.
7,
To
6.
that point-
I can see this being in the top 10.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, I told you
Absolutely.
this makes
Yeah.
my top 3. I just don't have the exact ranking as whether it's
Did
the
you
number
think so?
1 movie, the number 2
As a
movie, the
top
number 3.
3?
That's a top 10.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
If they don't, I mean, come on.
Crazy.
Yeah.
right?
I'm gonna be mad.
It would be silly.
Yeah.
It would be silly. But let's just say your own personal. Is it in your top 3, your top 5, top 10?
I would say here's the thing. Everyone always asks me this, and I never know, like, because then I forget what actually happened.
Yeah,
Like,
no,
life is
exactly.
so.
Just right now
I
at
get
this
it.
Yeah, a lot of
moment, I'm
movies.
saying
I
top
get it.
5.
I get
Yeah.
it.
But it's only because I don't remember everything I've seen this year.
Right.
Yeah, I need a whole list. Yeah, let me check
Yeah,
out the whole
exactly,
roster of stuff we've done.
But
I
it's,
would definitely put it in the top 10 because the year is not over yet.
Yeah,
The
no, it's
season
not
is
over yet.
the award season.
now
is not
in this
over yet.
moment, as best I can say, top 5. I don't, who
Well,
knows what's coming down the line.
since we're off of Spotlight for the one of the things I hate is that there's just so much speculation of, oh, should the Revenant win, should this, and it's like, no, who the hell's seen these?
I
Yeah.
don't know.
No one's seen
Right.
any of this.
I
I
predict
understand.
that this movie will get a surge of more viewers only because what time is it this part of the year? It's
Now.
It's Christmas
Oh.
time. No, it's
Thought we were going
Christmas.
different
So
route
you
with
think
that
they'll
one.
get more people going to it
I
because
think
of
more
it?
people are going to be seeing this movie more for like the Catholic, especially this movie is going to get more viewership and numbers just because of the year. The
Don't go
part
to
of the
Midnight
year
Mass.
is.
Go to
September.
Midnight.
Why would you? Because I'm curious.
I
Because
think it's
I would
because
think that
Christmas time. There might
I know,
be
but why
just
would
a
you want to
surge.
see this kind of movie in a Christmas thing? Because I would think that they want to see more escapism. You think they would go see something more serious?
I think everyone's gonna go see Star Wars. That's a given. But I think a lot of people are also going to be seeing Spotlight around the same time too.
I think so, but for just a little bit different reasons. I think just because right now it's not yet. I don't think it's reached its crest yet on
No, I
part
don't
of its
think so
wave.
at all.
No, I think
And
in
it's-
January it will. But
Yeah, and I think, but
I think it'll get
it's
more
a
serious
good.
after the holiday.
No, but I think that it's a good time of year. It's as if like Open Road knew they had the goods.
Yeah.
Let's release it early November. We know that Hunger Games is coming out. We know all these movies are coming out, but they felt strongly that this could ride that wave. There have been some other independent movies that have gotten really good notice, but they really haven't fared as well. Like Spotlight is really starting to come into its own. I think it's a good time because it's vacation time. And I think because of Star Wars, there might be a lot of people who are either turned off and they're not even going to attempt to see Star Wars for a couple of weeks, that with right marketing, right advertising for Spotlight, it's going to get that older crowd to go see Spotlight. And I think because it's
certainly an
vacation
adult
time.
movie.
I just don't think people are
Absolutely.
calling this a Christmas movie and going to see it.
Right.
They-
No, I agree. No, I agree. But they're going to see it on the merits of it being a very good movie, with the merits of it being a contender in one way, shape, or form as a serious film. So,
No.
and this one definitely, like I said, it makes my top 3. It would make my top 5. Another movie that we haven't broached yet that I'm going to throw out there and throw some love at. There's a movie called Brooklyn, which I
loved it.
thought was beautiful and amazing, and that too makes my top, definitely in my top 5. So but again, we haven't seen the one granddaddy of them all to really say how good or whatever it is. I think it's still a way. I don't shun commercial movies, and that one particular movie could have that impact in today's cinema as that small movie did in 1977
You know
cinema.
what?
Could.
Let's find out. Let's
We
find
will.
out. Here's what this is going to be an interesting comment. If you watched, if the Star Wars movies were released in the order of Episode 1 through 6 in that order, I don't think we'd have a franchise.
I don't disagree with you.
And anyway, any last thoughts about Spotlight? Since that's the movie we're dissecting today, and in 1 week we'll be dissecting Star Wars. So
I think it's a great, as an unfortunate story as it is, it was a great film to tell this story. And growing up in this community, being that age when this actually happened, it's scary. For me personally, I mean, I went to a Catholic grade school, Catholic high school. I was a kid and a teenager surrounded by priests, surrounded by brothers, surrounded by this, literally surrounded by this community. And it's just so scary how accurate those numbers were and how close to home it hit for me. And I think just from a filmmaking and storytelling point of view, it was so well executed. And people need to know what happened.
Demetri?
Yeah, as I'm a really big fan. I really think that this is a great movie, from all aspects, from filmmaking, from performance-wise, from the way that this movie was put together, editing. Like, this is a movie in which the team worked together to make a really solid film that's about a very tough subject matter. You can look at it as this thing that's damning the Catholicism, the Christianity. But you can also look at this movie as a real history lesson as to what research and solid journalism can bring about and change into the world. And that's how I can look at Spotlight.
John?
All I can say is congratulations to Mr. McCarthy. Put together a great script with Josh Singer. They put together a great team. They all were doing their best, and it turned up on the screen because it's a really good movie. It's a fine movie.
Yep.
Well, there you go. There you have it. It's another anatomy in the books. Speaking of that, we've got so many more to go. In the Heart of the Sea, Star Wars, Big Short, Revenant, Son of
Daddy's
Saul,
Home.
Daddy's Home.
Danish Girl, Brooklyn.
Danish
perhaps?
Girl, Brooklyn.
Those
So
ones
many.
are
Carol.
somewhere.
I can do those
So
right
many
now.
Carol.
Now, you know what the unfortunate thing is? While I remain here holding down the ship for the next couple of weeks,
Yeah.
you guys
Some
will be
of
in
us
on
will be
some
in
of them,
Flex.
but you
We'll
guys are
figure
kind of...
something out.
You guys are
Maybe
leaving
I'll be
me.
on Skype.
I'll be here in spirit.
Well,
I could be a spirit.
either way, the good people can follow and support Demetri at...
Please support me at DMovies1701.
And you can follow me at Serafini TV.
John Comerford, hashtag John
You
Comerford.
cannot follow me anywhere.
You can follow Sarah Stratton, who now has a Twitter, at Sarah
There you
Stratton.
go.
And of course, follow us here at Movie Anatomy on Twitter and The Popcorn Talk on Twitter, Instagram, all that fun stuff. Thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you next time for another Anatomy of a Movie.
Bye.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.